Welcome to my tutorial of Milos and Kilo for the Switch. And this is on multiple platforms. This game's on PC as well. And I'm unsure if it's on any other platforms, but I beat it on PC a while ago. I didn't do a tutorial for that version because I had used a item that gives you invincibility. If you fail a stage too many times, they'll offer you an invincibility item, which means you can basically just take that and skip the stage. And since I was just going for the kill for my game's beaten list, I would use the invincibility item sometimes. So it wasn't really good for a tutorial since I skipped stages, even though the game allowed it. But this time, I didn't install a patch for this Switch version on the Yuzu Emulator. And I believe if I would have installed the patch, I probably would have had the option to skip stages. I'm guessing it was patched in for players that complained about the difficulty, if I had to guess, because I didn't see the option offered here without the patch. So I'm going to be playing through all the stages without any skips. So I thought this would be better for a tutorial. The clear time for the game was 1 hour 57 minutes on the clear screen for the game. My documented time was 2 hours and 39 minutes, which includes, some pause menus, pausing the game to check a video on the game and things like that. Does kind of add up, so that's part of my completion time, but the game has it listed as 1 hour 57. I guess it probably just strips out the pause menus. So this game is a lot like Adventure Island, but much tighter control than those games. But it's definitely a speedrun style kind of game. You can see the counter up at the top, which gives you your completion time on the stages, so you can try to beat the stages quicker and beat your scores, get better ranks. But I just played for completion. But you can see that there's a rhythm to the gameplay as far as the movement. It's best to keep moving. Learn the stages so that you can just keep moving without stopping is the best way to play. But I tend to do that type of aggressive playing naturally when I play these kind of games. Even if I die a lot, I'll usually find a fast path through a stage. So this game wasn't too bad for me, though. There was a few stages that took me quite a few tries. There were definitely some hard stages. But the game overall, I would say it was a moderate difficulty for these kind of games, but it depends on your experience level with these type of games. The goal is just to get to the end of each stage. If you get hit once, you die. So you have infinite continues, but if you die, you'll start at the beginning of the stage. But most of the stages are probably only about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, at most. So you just got to learn the path through the stages. It's a combination of, holding the jump button for a long time, holding it for shorter. It's almost like a rhythm game, with these type of platformers. And you just have to put it all together. The enemies always behave the same whenever they appear. So once you know their patterns, they're always going to do the same thing. So it's very much like the old games that it's inspired from. But yeah, I thought it would be pointless to make a tutorial on my PC playthrough since, I did beat a few of the trickier stages, but I had skipped a lot of them. Like I said, because it was just it's just about beating the game within the game's rules, when it comes to beating these games. I go through a high volume of games, so I'm not always looking to do a challenge run on every game, I'm just trying to beat it. And, for certain games that I really like, I'll go back and do, the hardest modes, things like that. This is pretty much, a one-time playthrough for me. Unless I'm beating ports of the game, then I'll go back and beat it on other consoles if it's available on anything else. Though I probably wouldn't purchase it on other systems, just to beat it. But, if I come across it on an emulator in the future, I'll definitely play it. So when you're playing as the dog, occasionally you're going to get the dog, and that turns it into an auto-scroller stage where the screen keeps scrolling. So you don't have any control of your speed. You can't slow down or speed up. You're just at one speed. But you can control the dog as far as, you can jump with it. And if you tap the button midair, you'll home into the enemies, Sonic the Hedgehog style. And the newer Sonics, and I think Sonic Advance, where, if you jump in midair, the enemy will have a homing reticle on it. You hit the button again and you'll home into it. So you don't have to actually space your jumps properly. It kind of just does it for you. So you'll be chaining those homing those homing attacks a lot when you're playing as a dog. The dog also has a roll move that can break through small blocks, and it gets under very low ceilings. So you pretty much need to use it to get under these low ceilings and break the blocks. And, as far, the only thing really is just knowing the spacing and the timing with the takeout, just getting used to the flow of the stages. But the dog sections can be harder only because, you can't stop and analyze what's going on. So, you'll have to die on some of them trial and error. But it doesn't start off too difficult for, it gets a lot more challenging later. So it's really, the first stage is kind of like just introduction. So for these monkeys that throw coconuts up in the tree, you can kind of just move forward and lure them to throw the coconut and then just jump it. That's the easiest way to deal with them, I found. You could also just get them to throw the coconut and then deflect it with one of your, weapons. Or you can take them out. You can just kill the monkey and if you can reach it. You have limited ammo, but you get ammo replenishments constantly. Basically, it's kind of like Adventure Island, but it's not. In Adventure Island, you have health that continually depletes. Luckily, in this game, you don't have that. Because in Adventure Island, you got to get fruit to keep your health up. But in this, you get the fruit to keep your ammo up. So every time you use your attack button, you throw out a fruit, and you'll waste your ammo, and you get more fruit to get your ammo back. So for this cat, you only have to hit it 3 times to kill it. It's the first boss. The basic idea is to just dodge everything, and then when the horde of rats comes, you jump over it, and you hit the homing attack to hit the cat each time. You do that 3 times, and that's all you got to do for this cat. It's an easy first boss. It shows you kind of how the bosses work. They're all kind of like this, but they just get more difficult with the obstacle navigation. So yeah, so basically just keep your ammo up, and you can collect more. It prevents you from mashing the button and wasting all your ammo. So you want to use more precise shots when you run through the stages. So yeah, this is the first world. Not too bad. But it does have a pretty good, pretty smooth difficulty curve as you get farther in. Each world does get a little bit more difficult. I actually recorded this tutorial already. But then I found out that I had the wrong device selected, so it wasn't recording at all. So I'm just doing the commentary again. I don't do scripted commentary usually, so I'm just improvising. But I guess I got a little bit of a practice run, by doing the commentary once already. So now I'm a little bit more rehearsed on what's coming up. I did beat this game about a day or 2 ago, but I don't really retain that in my memory as far as what's coming up and all that shit. I go through a lot of games and I don't really think about them too much after I complete them, Unless it's a game that I want to, beat a hardest mode or do something like that, then I'll spend a lot of time on it. But this was kind of a quickie. Moderately challenging, though. Some of the stages are pretty hard, but, nothing that I got stuck on for too long. But, that's going to vary depending if you're, skilled with these type of games. Check out my tutorial for Adventure Island for the NES. That's a much harder version of a game in this style. But, I mean, this is definitely a better game. It plays a lot better. It's not overly difficult or anything, but it's the gameplay is way better, way tighter. The game really has a rhythm to it, kind of like a rhythm game almost, where, you're mixing long and short jumps and all these different things as you're just running through non-stop once you get it down. You really don't have to stop for the most part. You'll see I play the harder stages better usually because I died a lot more. Some of these other stages, like this, I may have not died much at all. There were some stages that I beat on the first try. Though not so much near the later parts of the game. I mean, most of those stages I had to try multiple times. But I think there was a few in the last stage that I beat the first time, maybe 1 or 2. So this is like that Donkey Kong Country stage with the silhouettes, the shadows. So you basically, it's the same shit. It's just like a little bit harder to see, to make out what's going on, but it doesn't really change things too much. Now this is probably the first difficulty spike, where the game starts to get a little harder, because now you have to dodge these spike traps and time some of these spike balls. Though it's pretty simple if you take your time. You don't have to run through. Remember that the timer is not actually counting down, it's counting up. So you have unlimited time to fuck around on the stages for as long as you want to try to plan your next move. You know, when you're just trying to beat the game, you don't have to worry about that. The timer is mainly if you want to beat your own personal best times or get better rankings and shit like that. I'm sure it's good for speedrunners. So you can grab onto these vines on the walls and you can wall jump off of them. That's one of the main mechanics that's added to this world. And of course the moving spikes and the arrows. There's not that much that's really changed though. I mean, you know, it's a little bit different style stage, but there's only a few new things added, and to each new world has like a few different mechanics. Though it doesn't necessarily, you know, I don't know that it necessarily builds off of mechanics from the previous worlds. I think some of them are disregarded, and, you know, sometimes you have like mostly new mechanics in the new stages. I think some of the stuff carries over. But the game does pretty much, you know, it does a good job of kind of preparing you for what's coming up. This is somewhat of an auto-scroller as long as you're in a minecart. You just got to be aware of what's coming up. You may have to jump. You know, occasionally you might have to jump and shoot these snakes like this to get these out of here, you know. You got to get used to all the timing. It moves fast, so you really got to know what you're doing as far as, like, you know, knowing all your movements. So, like Super Mario Brothers, this game has the mechanic where if you hold down the jump button while you're in the air and you land on top of an enemy, you'll do a super jump. And that's something that you're going to have to use to beat the game. It's you can jump on the enemies regularly by not holding down the jump button while you're in the air, and you'll just do a little hop off the enemies. But a lot of times you want to do that super jump to get that height so that you can get up to higher areas or make it across large jumps. So that's something you want to do. So, you know, you just buffer the command. Basically, you just hold jump while you're in the air. You know, you hold jump to jump anyway, to do a long jump, and then you just continue holding jump and land on top of the enemy, and you'll do a super jump. You know, now sometimes you may need to do a short jump and then hold jump to do a super bounce kind of thing. You know, there's stuff like that. But for the most part, that's how it works. It's similar to Super Mario Brothers, the old games. So for this guy, you got to dodge all the shit, basically, but you don't have to jump these fucking boomerangs like I was doing initially. This is why this guy took me a while. I was trying to jump the boomerangs, and I was dodging them for a while, but it's very hard to do that. It's very awkward timing. All you got to do is just grab the fruit and use those to deflect the boomerangs, and it's very easy. You'll just have to dodge some obstacles. When you're able to jump in the middle of the chain, you just hit the action button, and you'll pull the mummy to you, kind of yank him to you, and then when he's stopped, you'll jump and land on top of him and get your first hit in. And I think you got to repeat that like 3 times. So that's all there is to it. It's a little tricky. It's really not that difficult if you realize that you can destroy the boomerangs. I thought that I wouldn't be able to do that. So it did take me a little longer. So now we have some owls and we have these zip glider things in the stages, but I don't really remember there being anything like that unique in this stage. You do have some balloons now that you bounce off of, which basically serve as enemies that don't do anything. It's just something to bounce off of. As if there was a flying bird or something hovering in the air. It's the same type of thing. You can jump on these snakes. It makes it easier. Pretty easy introductory stage to this new world. So you do need to slide underneath those low ceilings as you do with the dog when you roll under shit. Same type of thing. I think it's, I don't even think you have to press down to slide. I think it's just, you just hit the action button when you're close to a low ceiling. They really simplified it. You're going to hold jump to do those super jumps as if you were bouncing off an enemy. That'll give you a super spring off of the spring. And, you know, very simple stage. I don't think this one is too challenging. You know, wait for the frogs to jump and then you can take them out. And a lot of times with these kind of stages, you know, you can take your time and kind of scope out shit and like learn the stage even if you're not going to run through it right away. You know, you can kind of take your time and just see what's coming up. This is how to get familiar with the stage. You know, so the only time that you have to haul ass is when there's something behind you. Like in the final stage, there is an escape sequence with a flame behind you. Obviously, you can't stop or you'll die. You know, or the dog sections. Whenever you grab the dog, you can't stop. But usually when you're in this form, you can just kind of stop and see what the fuck is up with the stage. So this starts out with an auto scroll with the dog, and this can be a little tricky. You got to make some pretty precise jumps where you got to get your spacing proper and be able to do it quickly. So it's actually pretty challenging. I don't know that it took me that long, but it is a challenging stage. I think it's one of the harder stages so far. It might be the hardest one up until now. It's really not that easy, but there's a rhythm to it. This is where it kind of really stands out, like I was saying, that the game kind of reminds me of a rhythm game with the way everything is kind of paced, you know, having to, like, you know, hold the jump for different lengths of time. And all you're really controlling there is the jump and your roll. You have no control over the speed of the dog. Once it's moving, you can't stop it, you can't slow it down. You can only jump, or, you know, use your homing attack, or your ground roll Sonic the Hedgehog style type of thing. I think this stage is a little tricky. But again, it's knowing what to do and where, like an old arcade game. You know, you just got to know what to do. You know, you got all the visual cues. You just got to learn it and get it into your muscle memory. It's just practice. I don't think it took me too long. I think this boss is a little bit tricky. It may be harder than the previous boss. I think the obstacles are a little trickier here, if I remember right. I usually skip the dialogue, but, you know, maybe some of it has probably got through. Now, this version of the video has the deaths edited out, if I didn't mention that already. I do have an unedited version with shows all the deaths, pause menus, and all that bullshit, if you're interested. So you can search that on channel, check that out as well. So for this, you're going to hit the rocks when they're in the air. So you got to jump up in the air and hit your action button to slam the rock into the guy, and you do that 3 times to win. Aside from that, you're going to have to learn how to dodge all the rocks, obviously, bounce off the snakes. You just got to get the timing right. It looks harder than it is because it's set up in such a way where everything is kind of spaced out to make it kind of easy to do all your moves. You know, it looks kind of hard, but it's spaced out in a way to make it, like, you know, fairly simple, though. It's still easy to fuck up, but it's not as hard as it looks. It probably looks a little bit harder than it is. You just got to get the rhythm down and the pacing. That's all it is. It's just, you know, getting those timings down. They're pretty tight timings, but, you know, it's not like, you know, I don't feel like this game has, like, pixel perfect timing or something, you know. It's challenging, but it's also a little bit forgiving, I think. So the bees can be tough when there's, like, 3 of them in a row, but there's 1 or 2 of them floating around. They're pretty easy to just kind of avoid. If you want, you could kill some of them that are in the way, the circling bees. A little bit irritating. It's hard when there's, like, 3 of those fuckers back to back, but whenever that happens, usually you have an opportunity to take them out with your little fruits. You're usually not in a situation where you got to try to get past 3 of them at full speed. So if you see 3 of them lined up, at least take out 1 of them, and then you can try to maneuver. You know, it's doable if there's 2 of them. You can get between them, but it's very hard to do with 3, if not impossible. I wouldn't even try to do it. I did try to do it for a little while, but no, it's not really a good idea. I think this stage is kind of tricky. If I'm thinking of the right stage. You want to wait for that spider to spawn so you can jump across. You need to bounce off certain enemies like that to get across some of these areas. The frogs, you can just wait for them to jump, or you can just kill them, you know. Actually, no, this was a short stage. I was thinking of another. There's another stage like this that's pretty tough. I'll try to be mindful of it. Like I said, I really don't have this game memorized, you know, but I can kind of remember the basic gist of shit that I did. This game played really good with a joystick. I liked using a modded joystick that I had. Actually worked really well for this game. Being able to hit the buttons really fast, you know, with the large buttons on a joystick was pretty effective. Though any decent pad would play very well as well. I think this stage is a little bit tricky. You can wait for those 3 spiders to drop into the pit and then just kill 1 of them. I would always jump into the water here for some reason when I did a wall jump off of that thing. So so make sure when you jump off of the wall, make sure you're holding left so you don't go off the ledge and into the water. Just something I noticed. This part I didn't really learn. I just was able to kind of get lucky and get through here. But, you know, whenever you're dealing with these kind of parts, it's good to make like a mental note. A mental marker is what I do with these kind of parts. And I'll mark a spot in my head. And then when the spike reaches a certain spot, that's when I'll jump. And you just got to dial in that timing. So once you get that down for those kind of parts, you can usually do them consistently. You know, take a game like Gym Power that I played through on the channel. I did a tutorial for that. It has a lot of ridiculous obstacles. And they have really bizarre, they look really bizarre and really hard to time if you're trying to like look at them and react to it in the moment. But the trick was to like make mental markers in my mind of when to move. And you know, by doing that I could beat a lot of those parts consistently. So that's the kind of trick I would use on any kind of, you know, moving obstacles like that. For these jumping monkeys, you got to just jump on their head. You can't kill them with the fruit, so you're going to have to jump on their head. It's a little bit annoying when you have one of them right there next to a coconut throwing monkey up in the tree. But for the tree monkey, you got to like, it's good to like lure it to throw the coconut, and you can jump straight up and jump right over it. Or you can deflect it with your weapon or just kill the monkey straight out. But I find it's easier to lure them to throw the coconut, and then I'll just jump. So I think this is one of the hard stages. Yeah, this one was tough. This is, again, all timing. It's, you know, very hard to explain what to do here, but you can see that the timing is very specific. So you want to roll under those rocks, obviously. It was very specific timing. Not too long, though. I don't know if that was one of the longer ones that was tricky, but I remember that being kind of tricky. The beginning section is a little hard to time with those moving spikes, but eventually you'll get the right timing. So now we're approaching the end of the semi-final world. With the minecart, you just got to know when to jump. It's a mix of minecart and regular platforming, and then you're doing this little surfboard shit, which is kind of auto-scroll type of shit again. I recommend taking out that frog and the crabs so you can get across. There's a bit of a slope where that arrow is, so it's not really a problem. But the hard part of this stage was that part with those three spikes in a row that go up and down. There's like a triple spike that goes up and down. That part is hard to time, but again, it comes down to a mental marker. I don't remember exactly how I marked it in my head, but it was like something about as the spikes were maybe going back up, I was starting to move right. You know, something along those lines, but I don't remember the exact timing. But you got to find, you know, that little mental marker, and then you can do it consistently. So this boss can be a little tricky. I think it's easier if you hold start. I think you can skip all the dialogue. I think I was mashing the button. So yeah, you're gonna have to jump. In the beginning, you want to jump shortly after the fight starts so that you can dodge the first projectile. Then after that, there's gonna be some weird jump timing on the platforms. That's like it's actually an early jump before you would expect to jump. It's actually really weird timing. But if you watch the video, you'll see that I jump kind of early on that part, and that's going to show you what you need to do. You're going to have to jump kind of early between those two platforms to dodge that second shot he fires off. You know. And then, of course, you can get your hits in like usual, you know, when he's vulnerable. But the trickiest part is the second part of that fight where there's like a little projectile he launches it in a really bad timing between two platforms. It makes it really awkward. But you got to jump pretty early to get it in. So, you know, pay attention to the exact timing. If you're having trouble with any of the timing on that fight, you know, watch the video and see exactly how I timed one of the jumps early. You'll notice it if you look for it. This is the final world. This first stage is not anything challenging. There is a few challenging stages here. I think this was one of them. This was one of the hardest stages in the game. So you want to lure those monkeys to throw the coconut, obviously, like I was saying, and then jump over it. So here, lure it out again, jump over it, then jump on the jumping monkey. And then for the fish, you can just run under them and they'll go over your head if you time it right. Use this fish to get up on these trees so you can skip all this shit. Then you got to be fast and you got to, bounce jump off the monkey's head onto the bird and then to the rope. You got to do all that very fast, but you want to be doing super jumps on those bounces by holding the jump. And then you'll get to the end pretty easily if you do that. But it's tricky. It's one of the harder stages for sure. This stage, I don't remember it being anything, too stand out. Because we've been dealing with a lot of these tight jumps already at this point, so this didn't really stand out to me. Make sure you're holding the jump button down when you hit the spring so you get those super jumps. It works the same on the springs. It's just moving fast pretty much. You just want to keep moving. And, you don't want to miss any inputs. The game is pretty damn precise as far as if you make any mistakes, you die. It's one-hit deaths. The levels are designed in such a way to where any little fuck-ups while you're in motion, usually ends up getting you killed. So you got to be pretty precise. But, of course, there are some areas where you can kind of just analyze what's going on. Jump off that bouncing monkey to keep moving. And use the bonefish to get across in the balloon. Just make sure you're doing your super jumps. Because those little short jumps are not going to get you across. You should be doing super jumps most of the time as a habit by this point. It's usually going to be better. There's only very specific scenarios where you might need to do a little baby jump or something, But a lot of times, super jump gives you more room to kind of... you can kind of wiggle around in the air with a super jump and adjust your jump a little bit if it's too long. So I think this is one of the harder stages as well. This is an auto-scroller with the dog. But actually, no, this is a short one. This was one of the easy ones. I don't think this took long. I was thinking of one of the longer stages with the dog that's pretty difficult, but I don't know if it's already passed. But I might recognize it if I see it. This shit does all look the same, so it is a little tricky to recognize. I don't think this was a hard stage, if I remember right. I felt like they gave you like a number of pretty easy stages to cruise through compared to some of the others in this final stage. But, the final boss can be tricky, and then the final escape sequence is quite difficult. That's probably the hardest part of the game. So, there's still that. I don't think this one was too bad. So, this is the final boss. Initially, he's going to alternate low fireball, high fireball, low fireball, high fireball, etc. He'll always do that. But then the patterns change to where it's like high fireball, 2 lows, high, 2 lows, stuff like that. So you got to memorize those patterns. So you will get used to it after you die enough times. It's a little tricky at first, but jump, slide, you see the pattern. And then you're going to jump and hit the bomb in the air, and then he's going to do his laser. That's when you're going to time your jump to land on his head. So now you're hitting multiple bombs at him, and soon you're gonna do it again, and he's gonna like freeze in place and try to shoot a laser, and you're gonna land on him. He always does the same order of fireballs, so you just got to memorize those patterns with the fireballs, and learn that. And of course, it's not just dodging the fireballs; you do have to manage all the holes in the ground he makes as well. So you got to kind of manage all that, but it's not too bad. So now it's pretty much an auto-scroller. Since you got fire behind you, you can't stop or you'll die. So you have to hold right the whole time. So it's basically an auto-scroller. And this is all timing. You got to get all the timings down. You can't do stuff too early or too late. It's got to be pretty much perfect. There's really not any room for error. So it's just trial and error to learn this. Jump, hit the snake. This, you can deflect all the coconuts. I like to deflect all 3 of them with my weapon by jumping and shooting at the right time. You got to get the timing down right. I've seen other players just jump and dodge them, but that wasn't working for me. Now, at the very end, it's a little tricky when you get the dog, because at the very end, you have to do these little baby jumps and then go right into a roll immediately. I think you have to do that twice at the very end. You don't want to do the jump too long, or you're going to get killed by the fire at the very end of the stage. But if you do it right with a short jump and go right into that ball, you'll pretty much have the fire like on your ass the whole time, like, almost on the hitbox of your character, but it won't kill you. So that's pretty much how I did it. And that's basically it. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching.